three pillar approach to digital government investments as part of the OECD framework. So strategic planning, where you're considering alignment with different policies, but also the overall digital strategy. You're considering risk management, and there's also the value proposition or business case process that you are using to go to get approval and funding for your project. So this is where you would factor in all of these considerations around the different requirements, the different approaches that you tick off. Then as part of coherent implementation, there's the approval and funding mechanisms, project management and procurement. So that again offers different gateways to check that these projects are moving into the implementation phase, still with all of these considerations in mind. And then we go into the monitoring and accountability and evaluation of these investments to make sure that once the projects are in place or the services are in place, or also as part of their delivery, we are still monitoring to make sure that they're meeting those user needs, that the services are effective, that they are delivering the benefits that they said they would back in the approval stage. So for example here, in that value proposition business case phase, Norway requires the different agencies to address social and financial considerations, including the environmental impact of their investment. So that's one thing that they're considering there. Korea has a very robust service or process to address the feasibility and alignment of different projects that are going ahead each year. And the other thing that Korea does very well is then there are annual gateway checks, where if you want to get the funding for the next year of your delivery cycle, you need to prove to them that you're doing what you said that you were going to do, that you've maintained compliance with different aspects, that you're continuing to align to the government's policy and strategy in this area. Denmark also has a portfolio management model that then enables strategic prioritization of investments in alignment with key digital government priorities. And this model requires institutions to develop action plans, which then need approval from the budget area before they actually get the funding. So that again is a different way that they make sure they do that. So, in terms of the next stage. So we want to offer another chance for you to reflect, because now we've spoken way too much. It's time for you guys to talk to yourselves, between yourselves, and what this might mean for the conversations that you've been having so far this morning, and what you might take away back into your agencies as well. So we'd like you, similar to this morning, to come back together in pairs or maybe small groups. And we're going to focus on three questions. So the first is, which of these best practices that we've been discussing has resonated most strongly with you? What challenges do you think will be most important in being able to tackle some of these insights in your own particular context within your agencies and within Thailand? And what are some of the resources or opportunities that we might have to overcome these challenges? So we've got 45 minutes, something like 45 minutes for these discussions. So we'll take it as a nice leisurely pace. We've got 12 minutes for each of these sections, and then we'll come back together and we're going to do another Mentimeter where you can share your main reflection or takeaway with us. But for now, find your pair or your group and focus on the first question, which what are the key things you've taken away from those OECD experiences?
until the coffee break. We don't want to keep you away from coffee, but then also I think myself and Julian, we are tired of hearing our voices. So we have changed the next activities a bit. So now, as we done in the morning, we are going to do a Mentimeter activity where we are going to ask you to provide input for the first question. So among all the practices that you heard, what resonated with you the most? And then after that, based on that result, we're going to go to the second and third questions, but we are going to make you talk. So that the rest of you don't need to hear from us, but then hear from your own peers. You can continue discussing while we deal with the technical issues.
Phone or your device. It will still work, but if you need the QR code, there it is again. It's the same QR code as before, but in case you've closed the browser, here it is. Give another 10 seconds for the last people who are getting the QR code. Okay. So if you could tell us, please, as part of your reflections for this section, what resonated for you the most out of those presentations. So maybe it was one of the practices from one of the countries, maybe it was one of the policy frameworks, but whatever, or maybe it was part of the conversations you just had with some of your colleagues, but whatever it was that has resonated the most with you from the session. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the challenges and opportunities after this.
I'm sorry, should I get back to the QR code again?
Ah, yes. Hold on, maybe I can show you. Does anybody else need the QR code? It's good? Okay, go to the next screen.
Julian,
Go.
can we have just one more minute?
Yes.
Julian. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so it looks like the top one that resonated with everyone was designing with the user, followed by data-driven policy, seamless services, and digital by design. So we've got a tie for third place there. So if we focus on designing with the user, what we would like now is to hear from you. So in terms of this being a very good idea, when it comes to the application for you in your work, what are some of the challenges that you see with being able to do this? Or are there some really good opportunities you're seeing that you can take advantage of to make sure that this is implemented? Is there anybody who would like to start us off with some thoughts? And you can speak in English or Thai. We have the interpretation available. Yes? Thank you.
เรื่องที่ออกแบบโดย user นะครับเป็นเรื่องที่สำคัญมากเลยเพราะว่าเราจำเป็นต้องออกแบบโดยผู้ที่ใช้งานที่สำคัญที่สุดก็คือ user เพราะว่าโดยในงานราชการเราต้องทำงานเพื่อประชาชนเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยการทำงานให้ประชาชนได้รับผลประโยชน์ที่สูงสุดถือว่าเป็นสิ่งที่สำคัญมากแล้วอีกข้อหนึ่งก็คือที่งานพัฒนาระบบที่ผมเคยทำมาส่วนมากเนื่องจากไม่เวลาโปรเจกต์ในการออกแบบโปรเจกต์ในการเก็บ requirement ส่วนมากก็เก็บโดยเฉพาะเจ้าหน้าที่ภาครัฐก็คือการเป็นการดีไซน์ with government unit by user ซึ่งเป็นสิ่งที่ไม่ค่อยดีเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยในการปรับให้มันได้ตรงตามความต้องการของผู้ใช้งานก็คือต้องมีการออกแบบจากผู้ใช้งานคือ design with user โดยตั้งแต่ต้นเลยครับก็ถ้าเป็นข้อนี้ถือว่าถ้าปรับได้ก็ถือว่าเป็นเรื่องที่ดีมากเลยครับโอเคขอบคุณครับ
Thank you. And do you see challenges in being able to access the users that you need to be able to do that engagement and testing? Is it easy for you to be able to do that? Or how? Or we can, if you want to. Yeah? Yeah, of course. So what we were interested in is how you would approach the user testing and your user engagement, or maybe also do you have any challenges in being able to access the users to be able to do the testing engagement you would like to do?
ถึงผู้ใช้ก็คือน่าจะมีปัญหาเพราะว่าในหน่วยงานภาครัฐนะครับ ก็อันดับแรกก็ต้องถ้าเนื่องจากมีเวลาในการทำ QR หรือว่าในการทำ QR ขั้นต้นมีเวลาไม่นานเช่นเนี่ยในการเรียกผู้ใช้งานมาสอบถามความเห็นถือว่าเป็นการยากเพราะว่าการทำ QR มีเวลาสั้นอยู่เพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยต้องมีการรับฟังความคิดเห็นจากอาจจะมีการเปิดช่องทางในการรับฟังความคิดเห็นจากน่าจะมีหน่วยงานที่เป็นเจ้าภาพในการรับฟังความคิดเห็นแล้วก็อย่างเช่นอาจจะทำเป็นสวิตที่อาจจะเป็นมีบริการที่มีหน่วยงานที่รับทำเป็นเจ้าภาพอย่างเช่น DJ รับทำบริการที่ประชาชนมีความต้องการนะครับโอเคขอบคุณครับ
ต้องขออนุญาตบอกว่าในภาคราชการเนี่ยการทำดีไซน์โดยผู้ใช้งานจริงๆทำได้ยากเนื่องมาจาก3 ปัจจัยที่1คือเรื่องของการทำ TOR อย่างท่านกรมพัฒนาฝีมือแรงงานได้บอกไว้ว่าการทำ TOR ของเรามีกำหนดระยะเวลาที่จะต้องทำการเอาไปเก็บ requirement กับผู้ใช้งานจริงๆซึ่งแต่ละงานมีผู้ใช้งานที่เกี่ยวข้องมากมายหลายกลุ่มนะการจะไปเก็บแต่ละกลุ่มเพื่อที่เอามาเขียน TOR ใจทุกกลุ่มให้สอดคล้องกับความต้องการของทุกกลุ่มเป็นไปได้ยากนะครับด้วยระยะเวลาจำกัดนะข้อที่2คือการเขียน TOR ของเรานอกจากเขียนแล้วเนี่ยจะต้องมีคณะกรรมการตรวจรับการจัดการจ้างเหล่านั้นนะถ้าเขียนเยอะหรือลึกเกินไปในการตรวจการจ้างจะทำได้ยากอาจจะตรวจรับกันไม่สำเร็จภายในระยะเวลาที่งบประมาณเราต้องจ่ายเราถูกบีบรัดด้วยเรื่องที่3ก็คือเรื่องของจะต้องจ่ายเงินงบประมาณจ่ายค่าบริหารจัดการเรื่องงบประมาณให้ทันภายในระยะเวลาที่จะต้องเบิกจ่ายให้ทันในภายในกำหนดอันนี้เป็น3 ปัจจัยหลักที่จะทำให้เก็บ requirement ได้ยากซึ่งเราก็มีทางเลือกทางอื่นโดยที่ก่อนที่จะทำ TOR เราไปเก็บ requirement ไว้ก่อนแต่ก็นั่นนี่แหละครับการทำไว้ก่อนเรายังไม่มีจุดที่แน่ชัดว่าสิ่งที่เราจะออกแบบสิ่งที่เราจะพัฒนามันจะเป็นในทิศทางไหนมันก็ยากกลับมาเรื่องเดิมคือยากในการกลับมาเขียน TOR อีกครั้งหนึ่งนะมันวนลูปอยู่อย่างนี้ครับ
I would like to say that I agree with both of you because when you look at the process of the user tasting and engagement, it's going to take a very long time. Like for example, if you look at the focus groups, each government agency, they have different stakeholders. But I think what we can start with is changing the mindset of the people who work in the practitioner level. Because, I mean, if we talk about digital by design, the whole process of the service, it has to start with the people who are going to have to work with it. So I think the big challenge, the big thing that we need to start with is change the mindset of the people in the civil service.
Arturo had a question.
I just have a question for the no, it's also for you. It's just a short question, so maybe if you want to use it's also a question for you and for the sir, because both of you were speaking about these terms of reference. So I just would like to understand what's the purpose of those terms of reference. To describe a project and to get the budget, to describe a service, because you were speaking about, if I got it right from the interpreters, you were speaking about engaging users to develop the terms of reference or to inform the terms of reference. But for instance, the lady here, she was speaking more from the UX design, the user experience, you know, more about the service design itself. So I was a little bit confused about what the terms of reference is. It's why, for what purpose do you need that? I know what terms of reference are. I just want to know in what step of the process the terms of reference come into place, because at the very end, the capacity building, it's about service design and delivery. And if you already have a bureaucracy blockage in there, you can try to work as much as you can on changing the public sector culture, but if the structures, if the governance structure is not favoring, advancing this, then you also have another problem. So I just would like to understand what's that, because maybe that small change can help a lot, eventually. So where in this process the terms of reference come into play? Because you both spoke about them, so.
ในกระบวนการนะคะของราชการของรัฐนะคะเวลาที่เรามีคิดจะทำโปรเจกต์อะไรเนี่ยมันต้องเริ่มจากการทำใช่ค่ะคือต้องเริ่มจากการทำคำของงบประมาณก่อนซึ่งมันต้องทำล่วงหน้าประมาณ2 ปี ซึ่งโครงการนั้นจะของงบประมาณเท่าไหร่มันต้องมี TOR เนี่ยมากำกับเพื่อให้เห็นว่าต้องมีกิจกรรมอะไรบ้างซื้ออะไรบ้างเพื่อให้ออกมาเป็นวงเงินที่เราจะได้รับจัดสรรมาเพราะฉะนั้นเบื้องต้นมันต้องมีอย่างเงี้ยค่ะมันต้องเริ่มจากตรงนี้ก่อนไม่งั้นเราเวลาฝ่ายที่พิจารณางบประมาณเนี่ยเขาก็จะดูจาก TOR ว่าที่เราคิดไว้เนี่ยสมเหตุสมผลไหมยอดเงินที่จะให้เนี่ยมันเท่าไหร่มันเลยผูกแบบนั้นนะคะก่อนที่เราจะมองเพราะนั้นเนี่ยมันก็เลยเริ่มแต่ละท่านเวลาจัดซื้อจัดจ้างตรงนี้มันถึงจะเป็นใช่ค่ะมันก็เลยต้องเป็นข้อจำกัดตรงนี้แล้วก็มันมีกระบวนการด้วยพอเราได้งบประมาณมาปุ๊บนะคะบางทีเนี่ยเราขอไปหรือว่า100นะคะพอเขาพิจารณาแล้วเราได้แค่80จากนั้นเนี่ยเราก็ต้องมาพิจารณา TOR ใหม่ว่าภายใต้เงินที่เราได้เนี่ยเราต้องยังไงค่ะเพราะนั้นเวลาเราจะเริ่มกระบวนการที่จะจ้างใครเนี่ยเวลาที่เราจะทำสัญญากับผู้รับจ้างเนี่ยมันจะต้องบอกว่าเขาต้องทำอะไรเพราะนั้นเนี่ยในนั้นต้องกำหนดไว้ใน TOR ให้ละเอียดไม่เช่นนั้นจะมีปัญหาในการตรวจรับนะคะว่าจะต้องทำอะไรเพราะนั้นเนี่ยเราอยากดีไซน์ระบบให้เป็นยังไงเราก็ต้องถามผู้ใช้ว่าจะต้องกำหนดว่า1โมดูลนี้ต้องทำอะไรได้บ้างเพื่อให้คนที่รับงานไปเนี่ยต้องทำตามนั้นเพราะนั่นคือมันเลยต้องทำตัว
But the terms of reference are for procurement then. That's my question. I mean, because I'm getting unclear. I mean, it was. In some cases, maybe you need to collaborate with external actors, to procure maybe services or to co-design services. But maybe in some points you don't. So this is why the terms of reference are only for public procurement purposes.
No.
Or not. This one, because you were speaking about public procurement. What you were speaking about was about a value proposition, so that you get the money to be able to procure.
But that's for the. So, because based on what I understood, you were explaining the budget process. Like, for example, in Korea, you will need to prepare your business case and then submit it to the Ministry of Finance and Economy to secure a budget for your project, right? I think she was talking more about the business case that they need to present to secure budget, and that once the
Not
budget
mattering if you have public procurement or not.
I think that comes at the
That comes
later
later.
stage.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So it's broader then.
Yeah.
Okay, and so far there's what you were saying is that in this context, so far, users, as part of this value proposition, or engaging users would be really much complicated because of the time or the short time that you have to prepare this and then the approval process and so on, correct? Yes or no? Yes? That was just my question. I just wanted to be clear about what we were speaking about in here. Because I think, both are related, but it's different things what we're speaking about. One is governance structures, and the other thing, is more about the design of the service in itself. So I think it's important all the discussion here myself.
No, we need
we need it
for the interpretation.
Sorry. Then I need to take out. Anyway, I think I'm clear right now, but all these inputs are really useful. Then eventually we'll also, submit some inputs to the agency.
I have a very simple follow-up question. So So I used to work for the Ministry of Interior and Safety, and I needed to prepare my business case to secure funding for my projects. But then in your context, who decides on the project that you're going to pursue? Like, how do you decide on the project? Is it from the leadership? Is it from the practitioners? Is the need from the citizens? So where do you start? Where do you start with preparation for your business case to secure funding?
Can I complement? Sorry, just to add to that question. And just to complement the question, because you might be remember another question. And the other question that I have in completion to her question is, on top of that, do you also coordinate with other bodies that might have a similar idea of a project or a need, so that if you bundle the project proposals under one single terms of reference? Because in here, there is also a risk of fragmentation at the same time, and that is completely aligned to what it was you or Julia were presented about the government efforts. So I'm just curious about that. First, the question of Sayu, and then my question about, okay, but then, do you coordinate also internally? Like mainly to avoid duplications and so on.
เริ่มต้นว่าใครอนุมัตินะคะมันก็จะมีอยู่สองส่วนนะคะก็เริ่มจากความต้องการของผู้ใช้บางส่วนเหมือนกันนะคะแต่ว่าบางอันก็เราอาจจะคิดว่าเราอยากปรับปรุงพัฒนากระบวนการทำงานของเรานะคะว่าเพื่อให้เช่นการบริการประชาชนเนี่ยเราก็อยากให้คือเรามองเห็นปัญหานะคะว่างานมันบางคนทำงานอาจจะหลายงานอาจจะทำให้ลดขั้นตอนการทำงานอย่างนี้ค่ะอันก็คือมีสองส่วนนะคะเวลาเราเสนอเนี่ยคนที่อนุมัติเนี่ยถ้าตามโครงสร้างถ้าตามงบด้านดิจิทัลเนี่ยเขาก็จะมีคณะทำงานนะคะที่กันกรองโครงการก่อนนะคะแต่ว่าถ้าในหน่วยงานเดียวกันเนี่ยมันก็จะคณะกรรมการก็จะมองเห็นความซับซ้อนอันนี้คือภายในหน่วยงานในกระทรวงนะคะเสร็จแล้วเนี่ยก็เข้าไปแต่ว่าคนถ้าไปของประมาณเนี่ยก็จะมีของกรรมธิการนะคะสำนักงบพวกนี้ค่ะก็จะต้องพิจารณานะแต่ว่าอนุมัติคือซึ่งก็อาจจะไม่ได้รับอนุมัติก็ได้ค่ะอันนี้ก็คือส่วนที่ดำเนินการนะคะหน่วยงานไม่คิดที่จะทำตรงนี้เนี่ยยังไงก็ต้องไปของงบซึ่งจะมีสำนักงบประมาณด้วยค่ะเพราะงบมันมาจากงบภาครัฐเรื่องการบูรณาการใช่ไหมคะว่าหน่วยงานอื่นๆหน่วยงานภาครัฐอื่นๆที่มีบริการเช่นเดียวกันทำไมไม่ทำร่วมกันอันนี้น่าจะมีมันจะมีงบที่มันเป็นงบบูรณาการเหมือนกันนะคะที่มันเป็นเอเจนดาเบสของประเทศนะคะว่าทำเรื่องนี้ปุ๊บเนี่ยมันก็จะมีงบบูโลกหนึ่งแล้วก็จะมีหน่วยงานหลายเรื่องหน่วยค่ะที่จะวิ่งไปขอตัวงบบูรณาการเนี่ยก็มีค่ะแต่ส่วนมากดิจิทัลเนี่ยมันจะไม่ค่อยมีหรือเปล่าระบบใหญ่ค่ะก็จะมีบางโปรเจกต์อะค่ะที่มันเป็นอเจนดาเบสของประเทศอะค่ะ
So, if I understood correctly, when you are building your business case, your first consideration is a national priorities. And then based on that, each agency and ministry come up with the key initiative projects that meet the national priority. Okay.
So, one thing I was thinking in terms of, it was based on something that you shared as part of yours, which was very helpful in setting it up. And I think it was, once you've started with an idea, then you have to do the terms of reference, and as part of doing the terms of reference, you have to do the user testing as part of that. And I was wondering, is it possible to kind of flip the process a little bit, and maybe can you start with the user testing and engagement to help you identify the idea rather than the public agency identifying the idea? Or is it the case that you don't have the budget or the approval to start the user testing until you've started the development of the terms of reference? Is that the... No budget until... Okay. Yes, so that's a big challenge. So that is... So that's one of these things that hopefully we can take away from today is it sounds like that's one of the key challenges for you to be able to do this. So maybe one way is to go back to what we're talking about in terms of budgeting and managing investments is there are certain other mechanisms like potentially there needs to be dedicated funding to allow you to do user engagement and testing outside of the process of the terms of reference development. So maybe that's one way if you can provide a funding mechanism, some sort of approval process to start the user testing earlier in that process, that could be one potential way to look at it.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your experience, your insights. It's really helpful to hear directly from you. And then what you have shared throughout today, we're going to feed that back into some of the interactive sessions that we will do together with you, where we will address some of the challenges and then identify opportunities exist in the Thai public sector. So thank you very much, and thank you for paying attention to our presentation for really long and then being part of this exercise. And then now, before the next session, you're free to go enjoy coffee. Testing. Better?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope you've all had a lot of coffee. If you feel like you want to get up and stretch your legs or stretch your back, I won't be offended. And I'll try and keep it as painless as possible. So I'm from I'm the Director of the Business Standards team within the Strategy, Planning and Performance Division at the Digital Transformation Agency. I am really pleased to be here with you to share Australia's experience in its policy approaches to better, more accessible and more inclusive public services. Digital transformation remains as one of the key strategic issues of mutual concern related to each of our countries' interests. The OECD Digital Government Policy Framework is designed to support governments in their digital transformation journey. It recognises that successful digital transformation means that we are delivering public services that are shaped through stakeholder engagement, capable teams, enhanced accountability and innovation. The Digital Transformation Agency's initiatives align with this approach. The Digital Transformation Agency's mission is to provide strategic and policy leadership and expert investment, advice and oversight, driving government digital transformation that delivers benefits to all. My team sits within the agency's Australian Government Architecture and Policy branch, and it's my role to support the Australian Government Architecture's use across the whole of government. Still can't hear? Sorry. Any better? Yeah. Okay. I'll try not to move. So my team sits within the Australian Government Architecture and Policy branch, and it's my role to support the Australian Government Architecture's use across whole of government, and in particular, it's my team's current focus to ensure that the digital experience policy is effectively implemented and continuously improved to support the digital transformation of the Australian government. So
off by giving you some background about my agency and also the key framework that we've established that has made us the government's trusted advisor on digital and ICT transformation. So as you may or may not know, the Australian government federated in 1901. However, the Digital Transformation Agency is only a few years old, and we've been iterating our approach to fit into the system of government at the federal level. We have a unique value proposition as a policy agency and independent advisor. Our agency was established in July 2015 and functions updated in 2021. We're only a small agency with about 240 employees. Today, the DTA belongs to the finance portfolio of the Australian Government, and our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Chris Eckner, reports directly to the Minister for Finance. The Digital Transformation Agency, or the DTA, is crucial in modernising government services. Its mission is to drive innovation, enhance public service delivery and ensure efficient and transparent government operations. By focusing on user-centric service design, the DTA is creating a digitally empowered government that meets citizens' evolving needs. So I now want to give you a quick explanation about the DTA's Digital and ICT Investment Oversight Framework, as the Australian Government Architecture and the Digital Experience Policy both interact and support this framework. So the DTA developed the Investment Oversight Framework, or the IOF, in 2021. The IOF supports the pre-budget, budget and delivery phases of an investment through a comprehensive life cycle approach. The Australian Government Architecture supports all states of the IOF, and oversight of the digital experience policy is integrated within data collection mechanisms in each state. The IOF is a 6-state end-to-end framework providing a way for the government to manage digital investments across the entire project lifecycle from early planning through to benefits realisation. So, what are the 6 states? The first is strategic planning, which sets a common vision for the government's approach to digital and ICT investments. Prioritisation provides the government with visibility of short, medium and longer-term proposed digital investments, which improves planning and helps to identify gaps, overlaps and risks across a 10-year pipeline of capabilities. The contestability state ensures proposals are robust and meet whole-of-government digital standards prior to government consideration. The assurance state ensures that projects are on track to deliver expected benefits. The digital sourcing state simplifies the procurement of digital goods and services, including through single seller arrangements, with the Australian Government negotiating as a single buyer. And finally, the operate state provides the mechanism to feed insights from business as usual operations into all states of the IOF, from planning and policy development through to budget processes and assurance activities. Now, I appreciate that that is a very quick overview of this framework. Hopefully it provides a bit of background to my upcoming explanations about the Australian Government Architecture and the Digital Experience Policy, but please do not hesitate to reach out to me at any point afterwards or in the next day if you want to hear more about the Investment Oversight Framework. So first up today I'm going to talk about the Australian Government Architecture. So the Australian Government Architecture, or AGA, guides and supports the development and delivery of government digital services, focusing on user-centred design to meet citizens' needs. The AGA standardises digital service development across government agencies, ensuring consistency, efficiency and effectiveness through structured capabilities, policies and standards. The AGA includes reusable investments and resources such as systems, solutions, components, customisations, configurations and tools available on architecture.digital.gov.au. Content within the AGA is organised through capabilities and domains, which help with classifying and navigating the AGA. Capabilities represent discrete digital functions, such as hosting in the technology reference domain or payments in the service delivery domain. Domains group together capabilities, to help people classify their capabilities and navigate the architecture. The AGA's vision statement is to provide government agencies with a common and shared architecture underpinning their digital investments, and to provide a clear way of accessing the policies, standards and designs relevant to the design and delivery of digital solutions and the guardrails for delivery. Content needs to be relevant, reusable, easy to understand and aligns with the government's digital age. The vision also helps to align our own teams within the DTA working on the AGA and related initiatives. Successful outcome of our vision will mean the AGA content model is easy to navigate and organises content in a way that meets user needs. There is a simple approach to contributing content to the AGA and data is captured, collected and reported on in a meaningful way. There's a simple approach to contributing content to the AGA. The AGA is effectively integrated into the IOF and there is a mature alignment between the AGA and other agency enterprise architectures. The Australian government's digital landscape is vast and complex. The AGA increases our understanding and control of that landscape by consolidating government strategies, policies, standards and design artefacts in one place. It provides a big picture approach to identify opportunities, fill capability gaps, reduce risk and speed up delivery. By following the AGA, government agencies can avoid duplication, enhance cohesion and save money, ultimately improving the user experience for citizens, businesses and government employees. It's important to point out that the AGA is not just designed for architects. While there are many specialised and technical pieces for people who are interested, the focus is more on making it easier to understand how the directions and decisions of government all fit together. It's expected that agencies review the AGA for guidance on specific capabilities prior to undertaking investment proposals, ICT capability development or digital procurement activities. Alignment to the AGA is tested within the Digital and ICT Investment Oversight Framework for new investments, but the AGA also applies and provides guidance for agencies' internal business-as-usual activities. Next up, I'm going to talk about our digital experience policy. So over the last 12 months, my team at the DTA has been busily working away creating the digital experience policy and its suite of standards. The DTA's digital experience policy is crafted to focus on outcomes, ensuring that digital services are not only accessible and efficient, but that they are also tailored to meet the needs and expectations of users. Better service delivery sits at the centre of our digital transformation, and the policy provides a whole-of-government approach to standardise the design and delivery of a more cohesive and inclusive digital experience. The policy aligns with our data and digital government strategy and the 2030 vision of the Australian Government, which aims to provide simple, secure and connected public services for everyone and every business. The digital experience policy will take effect across the Australian Government in a transitional manner and consists of the recently updated Digital Service Standard, the Digital Inclusion Standard, the Digital Access Standard and the Digital Performance Standard. The policy has recently been mandated. This mandating of this policy is a significant accomplishment for the DTA and for the Australian Government. While the policy itself comes into effect on the 1st of January 2025, the standards take effect on a rolling timeline. The first phase of the updated Digital Service Standard came into effect on the 1st of July this year, with the standard now applying to new public-facing services. The remaining three standards take effect through a phased implementation approach from the 1st of January 2025, with varying services in scope for each. The digital experience policy and standards will offer significant and transformational benefits to both the Australian community and the Australian Government. Specifically, the Australian public, it will enhance the quality, accessibility and consistency of digital government services including improving the quality across vulnerable cohorts. And it will improve the data collection, analysis and scrutiny on government digital services and customer satisfaction, enabling more targeted intervention and use of resources. For the Australian Government, the policy will reduce costs in addressing design and system issues with digital services. It will increase trust in government in providing digital services that are available and reliable for all. And it will enable comprehensive government reporting to inform digital investment decisions. So why a digital experience policy? The recent independent reviews have called for the Australian Government's digital services to be more integrated, allowing consistent experiences for users. The digital experience policy has been developed in direct response to these, along with feedback received during the recent refresh of the Digital Service Standard. As mentioned, the digital experience policy and the data and digital government strategy are closely aligned, with both emphasising digital services that are user-centric, interoperability of digital systems, and continuous innovation and improvement through data analytics. As mentioned, the digital experience policy has been developed in direct response to independent reviews and the recommendations that came from these reviews. One such review is the MyGov user audit. Now, MyGov is the Australian Government's secure online portal that allows users to access its services online. The MyGov user audit involved a panel of independent experts who looked at how well MyGov is performing for Australians when it comes to reliability, functionality and delivering a user-friendly experience. In January 2023, the MyGov user audit findings and recommendations were released. In December 2023, the government responded to these findings and recommendations, and our standards have been developed in direct response to these recommendations. Now, I'll go into more detail about the standards a bit later, but briefly, the Digital Service Standard establishes the requirements for designing and delivering digital government services. The Service Standard guides agencies to create and maintain services that are user-friendly, inclusive, adaptable and measurable. The Digital Inclusion Standard sets the requirements to design and deliver inclusive and accessible government digital services to ensure that no one is left behind across the diverse culture of Australia. The Inclusion Standard identifies and elevates best practice approaches to a whole of government level to foster greater digital inclusion and accessibility for all people and business. The Digital Access Standard sets the requirements for agencies to make informed decisions to reduce the number of entry points to government digital services. And the Digital Performance Standard sets a consistent approach for agencies to monitor and report on how effective their digital services are from an end-user perspective. By monitoring and reporting on these measures, agencies will be empowered to improve their services through evidence-based, data-driven findings. While the concept of a whole-of-government policy focusing on user experience began after considering the recommendations of the independent reviews, we realised that we needed to ensure that our whole-of-government approach would be practical and achievable to apply, giving agencies the best possible opportunity to comply with the requirements of the proposed policy. The development of the Digital Experience Policy and Standards encompassed a number and variety of research activities and events conducted over the period of 12 months. We engaged with 120 agencies, with our workshops and presentations registering over 350 attendees. And we also conducted a digital service monitoring pilot which focused on understanding the metrics agencies use to measure the effectiveness of their digital services. These workshops and engagements were vital when crafting the policy and standards. They provided us with the opportunity to validate our thinking and ascertain whether or not what we were aiming for would actually be feasible. We also found that agencies vary in size, purpose and user groups, providing both transactional and informational services. What we learned is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to how agencies will apply the digital experience policy, and so we have developed the policy and its standards to accommodate this, allowing agencies to apply in ways that suit their individual circumstances. Ultimately, however, it is recognised that the policy wants the same outcome for everyone, and that is a better user experience. The Digital Service Standard supports agencies to deliver simple and seamless digital services. The Australian Government implemented the first version of the Digital Service Standard back in 2016, but we realised that given the degree to which digital maturity had evolved between 2016 and 2023, the original version was no longer fit for purpose. This new version sees us reducing the number of criteria from 13 to 10, but expanding its scope to consider the entire life cycle of a digital service, mandating continual improvement and refinement into the services we deliver. The Service Standard has 10 criteria which focus on the following. It emphasises the importance of understanding user needs and involving users in the development and testing of services to ensure they are effective and valuable. It highlights the necessity of designing services that cater to all users, ensuring no one is left behind and complying with relevant legislation and standards. It stresses the significance of linking services across agencies to provide a seamless experience for users and promote efficiency within government. And it focuses agencies on the need for ongoing monitoring, measuring and updating of services based on user feedback to maintain relevance and effectiveness, while prioritising security and data protection to safeguard users' information. The Inclusion Standard is an extension of Criterion 3 of the Digital Service Standard. Leave no one behind. And it's also a direct response to Recommendation 2 of the MyGov user audit to ensure that no user is left behind and that human rights are upheld. The Digital Inclusion Standard addresses the needs of at-risk cohorts by ensuring inclusive and accessible digital experiences through extensive user research and engagement. Insights from first-hand stories and targeted engagement significantly contributed to a robust inclusion standard, highlighting the need for inclusive design in government digital services. The Inclusion Standard has 5 criteria which focus on ensuring inclusivity and accessibility by co-designing with diverse user groups and complying with accessibility standards, and encouraging digital engagement by communicating benefits, ensuring reliable user experiences, and offering flexibility in service delivery channels. The Digital Access Standard supports government agencies to minimise and consolidate access points. Now, so we're all clear, straight from the start, the Access Standard is not about accessibility and inclusivity. It's actually about the entry points at which a user can access government information or services online. The Digital Access Standard aims to minimise and consolidate digital service access points to government services, enhancing user navigation and reducing confusion. The standard was developed following Recommendation 1 of the MyGov user audit to establish MyGov as the primary access point for Australian government services. Currently, Australian government services are dispersed across over 600 access points, leading to a fragmented experience. The standard seeks to centralise these services. The Access Standard has 5 criteria, with expected outcomes including a reduction in access points, a more coordinated approach to digital services, and a more consistent user experience across government platforms. The Digital Performance Standard is an extension of the Digital Service Standards Criterion 9 and was developed to ensure government agencies monitor the performance or quality of their digital services in a consistent way. The Performance Standard is also about ensuring agencies use their monitoring data for continuous improvement. Like the other standards, it has a focus on the end user perspective rather than from the perspective of a digital platform or a piece of technology. The Performance Standard sets a monitoring framework approach for measuring 3 performance metrics, which were chosen based on global best practice research and insights gained from the DTA's Digital Service Monitoring Pilot. These measures are availability of the service, the ability for users to successfully use the service, and finally, user satisfaction. The Performance Standard sets out 5 criteria for agencies to follow, focusing on implementing a structured monitoring framework to track the availability, usability and user satisfaction of digital services, ensuring continuous improvement based on user feedback, and establishing internal processes for analysing and reporting digital performance data and utilising existing mechanisms within the investment oversight framework to minimise administrative burden while leveraging insights for service enhancement. consultation with stakeholders garnered a huge amount of feedback about how the DTA can best support agencies to implement and comply with the policy and standards. From this feedback, we realised the importance of building out a repository of resources which we're calling the Digital Experience Toolkit. The toolkit will contain a range of guidance materials, design tips, checklists, posters and case studies to support agencies successfully implement and comply with the policy requirements. Our supporting documentation also contains the Digital Experience Policy Exemption Guide and Compliance and Reporting Framework. The Compliance and Reporting Framework ensures the policy implementation relies on existing data mechanisms within the Investment Oversight Framework, minimising administrative burdens while streamlining compliance and reporting processes. And the DTA acknowledges that some agencies really may be unable to meet certain criteria of the standards due to such concerns as legacy technology barriers, substantial financial burden, or integration considerations with MyGov. Therefore, through the exemption process, agencies may apply in writing for exemptions with evidence to justify their requests. To ensure they remain fit for purpose and effective, the DTA will undertake a regular evaluation of the policy and standards, including compliance mechanisms, in consultation with impacted agencies. In conclusion, the Digital Experience Policy is a significant achievement of the Australian Government committed to helping agencies provide improved digital services for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roman. I think what we'll do now is we'll open it to the floor. If there are any particular questions for Bronwyn, I might start off. Hopefully it's not a curly question. But I was interested in what you were talking about in some of the performance monitoring and some of the metrics that we use. So availability, usability, and user satisfaction with the are there, like on the next layer down, are there specific metrics that you recommend that agencies should be doing, or how, or so what the thinking is around that?
Really good question. So initially it was our proposal, I guess, that we were going to be very prescriptive about the metrics that would need to be used, the calculations, the tools that agencies would use. But what we quickly found out was agencies are really different. They have different user needs, they have different types of services, and so what we decided was that there's a best practice approach. So most agencies in Australia would be measuring uptime, which is just a general availability of whether the web page is up. So what we're saying is that a mature agency with a mature monitoring framework in place would more likely be measuring whether not only is the page up, but is the link on the page working? Is that form actually available for users to complete? And in terms of completion rates and customer service feedback, so what we're suggesting is rather than, I think you touched on this before in your presentation, is rather than leaving the feedback to the end of the service, to when the person's completed the service, actually having feedback mechanisms throughout the service in that live environment. So as the user is completing the form or completing the service online, actually having a mechanism, it might just be a simple thumbs up or thumbs down, it might be a scale of 1 to 5, but having that availability to monitor the customer satisfaction as they're using the service, why they're dropping out, getting the feedback straight away. In Australia, sometimes we find some of the agencies often don't get feedback until a number of months after the person's used the digital service, and so sometimes it's not as current as what it should be to get that really, I'm going to say current again, because I can't give another word, but that immediate feedback while the user is using the service.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions, please?
Thank you. I'm very interested in digital service standard that you mentioned about the 10 criteria, right? So can you explain more about the do no harm criteria?
Yeah, so I'll go into that a little bit tomorrow in my presentation. Okay. Yeah, but that's about ensuring that your service protects user information and privacy, and ensuring that basically we're not using data we're using data for what we say we're going to be collecting it for and using it for. Yeah, so it's a really simple explanation, but yeah, that's the do no harm is protect your users.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think there was another one here. Did you have a question as well? Oh no, sorry. Yes, please.
ค่ะในที่ประเทศไทยเนี่ยนะคะ DCA
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry โอเค you ready ค่ะที่ประเทศไทยเนี่ยนะคะก็ทาง DCA เองนะคะจะเป็นหน่วยงานหลักในการจัดทำแผนพัฒนารัฐบาลดิจิทัลขึ้นมาค่ะคราวนี้ค่ะตอนในส่วนของการจัดทำแผนเนี่ยระหว่างจัดทำเนี่ยเราก็มีการทำโฟกัสกลุ่มโดยที่ให้หน่วยงานที่เราคิดว่าเขามีส่วนเกี่ยวข้องในการขับเคลื่อนแผนพัฒนารัฐบาลดิจิทัลเนี่ยเข้ามาร่วมด้วยค่ะแต่หลังจากที่ทำแผนจนสำเร็จออกมาแล้วเนี่ยพอเอาไปขับเคลื่อนจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยบางโครงการที่เราระบุเอาไว้เนี่ยจะไม่สามารถขับเคลื่อนได้อย่างเต็มที่เนื่องจากว่าหน่วยงานที่เราใส่ระบุเอาไว้ว่าเป็นคนรับผิดชอบหลักในโครงการเนี่ยเขาไม่มีความเข้าใจหรือบางทีขาดงบประมาณณตอนที่ต้องดำเนินการค่ะก็เลยอยากทราบว่าออสเตรเลียเนี่ยมีปัญหาเกี่ยวกับเรื่องพวกนี้หรือเปล่าค่ะแล้วก็อีกคำถามหนึ่งค่ะที่อยากจะสอบถามค่ะคือชอบหลักการของ OECD มากเลยค่ะไม่ว่าจะเป็น Digital by Default หรือว่าตัวของDigital by Design เนี่ยนะคะแต่ว่าอยากจะทราบว่าการนำเอาหลักของ OECD อะค่ะไปปรับใช้ให้ออกมาเป็นกลยุทธ์หรือว่าออกมาเป็นโครงการนะคะทางออสเตรเลียทำแบบไหนยังไงอะค่ะขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you. So I can definitely answer the first one. So I agree that something that we were talking about this before. It's not uncommon for policies internationally, let alone in Australia, to be implemented and then left to agencies to just do the rest. So one of the really good things and one of the things I'm really excited about with the digital experience policy is my team and I we're going into a post-implementation support phase so we can iterate, so we can find out if we've got an opportunity that if the standards aren't quite hitting the mark, even though we've done so much user research and so much stakeholder engagement, if they're not quite hitting the mark, we've got an opportunity to refine them, to continue that stakeholder engagement with them, and continue that research. I definitely agree that if you don't have the support and the momentum behind you to keep it going, to keep people interested in implementing what you're trying to do, very challenging. That's one of the good things with the DTA is that we've got the investment oversight framework. So that's the framework that agencies have to come through if they're seeking funding for new ICT or digital investments. So they have to come through us, and so part of our compliance mechanism is if they're not actively applying the digital experience policy, we can give them a recommendation to say to build out your proposal to make it really robust. We need to be considering the service standard, the inclusion standard, the access standard, and performance standard. I wish I had a magic wand to implement that for all agencies and all approaches, but that's probably that's how we're sort of managing it in my agency. Yeah.
And then maybe to the second part of the question, I guess if you go from the conceptual stage of the different things you might consider before the development of a policy, looking at like other international best practices or policy frameworks or just general policy discussions, was there a particular process that you took to then try distill that into something that was more implementable for agencies or how to make it in a way that makes sense to them when you're having your stakeholder meetings?
Yeah, so we definitely, so as I said, we started off building out the standards and policies from the independent reviews, from the recommendations of the independent reviews. And I won't lie, we did go in going, this is what we think you should all be doing. and stakeholders soon came back and said, that sounds great, how are we going to do it? We're all different, we all do different things, we've all got different users. How can this policy really actually help us to help our users? And so I guess that's why we changed it from a prescriptive policy to more of that outcomes focus, recognising that agencies are going to have, so Australia has a lot of legacy systems and a lot of different sort of processes in place, and so understanding that each agency is going to have to do their best in their own way to apply it and making it more focused on supporting them to their unique needs, I guess, which is why, like I said, with the performance standard, we ended up not going with direct metrics or mandating tools that agencies had to use, but just encouraging that end-user focus and encouraging agencies to build their services and improve their services that are already in place, so their existing services, to meet user needs that they might not have done before.
I would just add with the OECD, because in particular you mentioned those, we think of it in the same way. So all of our countries are going to have a specific context, and then within those countries, all the agencies, levels of government have their own context. So I think, again, trying to focus on what is the outcome, what is the intent, what are maybe the guiding principles, is a way that then at least you can try to translate that into the other context. It's not necessarily a helpful answer when you just want to know, here are some key ideas I can just take and implement in my own agency, but that's where at least hopefully some of the sharing of practices across countries then helps. You can take the things that work. And also from different agencies within Thailand as well.
And I might just add one more thing, because I was thinking about how Canada has their sort of toolkit, I can't remember what it was called, but in the same way with the digital experience policy. So whilst the policy itself is really focused on outcomes, we are building up this toolkit that will then provide support to particular types of agencies. So your bigger agencies, or your service delivery agencies, your informational agencies. So we are building out a toolkit that gives a little bit more support, I guess, to particular services and particular agencies, but we haven't mandated it in the policy as such. So to give that flexibility to be able to successfully meet it. We're not policing it, we want to encourage it. We're encouraging agencies, we want to be enthusiastic about supporting agencies to really focus on those end users.
I think there was a question over here. Yeah?
Could you please go to the fourth page? Fourth page of the slide.
What's that one?
That is IOF,
yes.
Project Life Cycle. Okay, so I would like to share. I'm not sure how long did you take for the pre-budget phase? How long for Australia?
That's a great question. This is not my area of specialty.
It depends on
Okay, I just want to share. In Thailand, we use 2 years for the first phase.
Okay.
For pre-budget, that is from the last section that we talk about why we take so long.
Yeah, okay.
Just share this.
So it's definitely not 2 years.
depends.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it does. So we've just gone through our prioritisation phase, which is where and investment is right at the beginning of sort of that thought bubble. They're putting it towards, they're giving it to the DTA to sort of look through to see how robust it is. What have we missed? What are we missing? Is there anything we can do that when we actually put this to government, will it get approved? Are we going to get money to do what we need to do? And so that in itself is a month or two. It feels like a long time while we're in it, but it's actually quite quick. And then moving into contestability, which again is the next phase. So those proposals that have had that feedback, we've given those recommendations. The contestability phase is still not at budget, that's still pre-budget. And again, that's working with agencies to really build out a very robust proposal. And then the assurance phase is where it moves into they've been approved and now it's actually being implemented. The project or the initiative is being put into place. Yeah. I couldn't give you. I wish I could give you like a specific. It takes 4 days for this and 40 days for that. But yeah, it does vary a bit. But it's, I would say for the most part, it's within a one like that financial year cycle.
It's yeah, 2 years is a long time. I think the other thing that I would just compliment, because so for a bit of context, I came from the Australian government before OECD from the DCA as well. And I think the other thing about this methodology, and the same one that OECD is presenting, is by trying to have the methodology in place and the coordination body to help agencies through it, it's also trying to help reduce some of that time, because if you get it right at each step of the process, then hopefully you're not having to rework things or go back to the beginning, and or at least you know all the requirements you have to hit. But yeah, 2 years is the period. Then that's definitely a challenge. I can understand that. We are going to move into another exercise after this, but before we do that, are there any other questions for Bronwyn? No? Perfect. Okay. Yeah.
ก็ต้องขอบคุณก็คือที่พรีเซนต์มาก็คือไอตัวนี้เองครับ Digital Policy ผมก็เพิ่งเคยได้ยินเหมือนกันก็ได้ฟังคอนเซ็ปต์ก็ถือว่าเป็นเรื่องดีมากถ้าอยากจะทราบรายละเอียดต้องเข้าไปดูที่เว็บไซต์ของรัฐบาลออสเตรเลียใช่ไหมครับเพราะว่าเมื่อกี้เข้าไปดูใน Google ก็ยังไม่เห็นมีข้อมูลต้องเข้าไปดาวน์โหลดได้ใช่ไหม
Oh, I can share with you. It's digital.gov.au. Yeah, but I can come and share it.
Okay, ขอบคุณมากครับ
Thank you. I think you had it on one of the slides.
Yeah, I can. I'll write it down.
Yeah. But then what Bronwyn was saying, each of these, it's on there on the page with all the guidance and the toolkit and everything. So digital.gov.au, but we'll make sure the link is shared out as well. Okay, so I might invite Martin now, who is going to come up and talk to us about the next one. And we have a couple of
we can start spreading them out. Okay, so you've heard a lot, talked a lot today. There's been a lot of material that's been shared. We've got a few moments now. We've got about half an hour, so we'll finish at 5, don't worry. We've got an opportunity now to reflect on the day as a whole, what we've seen, what we've heard, what it means, and then what we might want to do next. So we're going to take this in 3 stages. So we'll take a bit of time looking at what we've heard. We'll take a little bit of time thinking a bit more analytically about what it means, what its significance is, what conclusions we can take from things, what patterns we've seen. And then we'll do a final section thinking about what we might want to do next with the material that's been shared today. So for each of those 3 areas, we'll take about 10 minutes exploring them. So that's why we'll be able to wrap up at 5 o'clock. We're going to use post-it notes for this exercise. So the way it's going to work, in each of these 10 minutes, it's going to start off with everyone just quietly noting down any thoughts that they have for about 2 minutes. And then you'll form a pair and discuss the things that you've written down for about 3 minutes. Then you'll form a group of maybe 4 to 8 people, so just the people sitting near you. And then you'll discuss the points that you've raised for about 4 minutes. And then for the final 2 minutes, you'll add your most important point to Mentimeter so that we've captured the key point that has come up in those discussions. Don't worry, I'll talk you through all of this as we go, and I'll keep track of the timings as well. So for the next 10 minutes, we're going to be exploring just what did we see today? What are the things that have been shared? What's been discussed? What's been talked about? What things have we heard? So the first thing to do is take 2 minutes just on your own, writing down what is it that you've heard today? What are the things that you can actually remember from what you've seen? What are the things that have stuck in your memory from all of the content that you've seen? So let's take 2 minutes on that, please. Write down your ideas, just on your own, quietly, on a post-it note. Hopefully you've all got one. And then I'll tell you when to move on to form pairs. So at this point, you don't need to have any analysis or interpretation. We're just looking for statements of what you've seen. So it should be quite simple stuff. Okay, 30 seconds more. Just noting down what you've seen today. Just the things are that you can remember. Okay, I'm now going to invite you to form a pair with anyone you like, and then just share with each other what you've written on your post-its. So share what you have remembered from the content that's been presented today. You've got 3 minutes for those discussions. Right, if you could now form groups of 4 or 6 people and share with each other what you've been discussing, please.
Yes, yeah. Okay, ขออนุญาตคุยได้อีกทีได้ SMS ยังครับใช่เมื่อตอนประมาณบ่าย 3 ถึงบ่าย 3 ครึ่งตอนนี้เขาได้ SMS กันเยอะมากเลยแบ็คแคนยอนเขาขอโทษลูกค้าไม่มีครับผมไม่มีตังค์ซื้อแคนยอนขอโทษลูกค้าก็รู้ว่าใช่เรียบร้อยน่าจะมาก็เลยอดมีช่องทางรั่วอีกหนึ่งช่องทางมีอะไรก็รั่วอยู่นักบุญเรื่องจะเสิร์ฟโปรดถามว่าแบ็คแคนยอนคุยกับสองไม่รู้เลยอันนั้นน่าจะต้องส่วนไปดีน่าจะคุยกับอีกเรื่องอะไร
ควรรู้ว่าเหมือนกัน
ก็ผมจดไว้ผมกับเขา
วันนี้ได้เลยบ้างก็คือเมื่อเช้าที่คุณเขาเล่าเรื่องในการพัฒนาดิจิทัลในไทยก็บอกว่าเราได้เงินแบบเท่าไหร่
ตอนบ่ายครับผมจะเอานโยบายพัฒนาดิจิทัลของประเทศอื่นเช่นเกาหลีมาหรือว่าออสเตรเลียมาซึ่งหลักๆในฟังดูก็คล้ายๆก็จะมีกรอบนโยบายหลักๆก็ดิจิทัลไปที่เขาเราจะเอาไปดีไซน์ก็คือดีไซน์ตั้งต้นให้เป็นดิจิทัลเลยไม่ต้องมีแมนนวลเลยนะข้อ2ก็คือ data driven ก็ขับเคลื่อนโดยข้อมูลคือต้องเอาข้อมูล
Okay, so if you could wrap your conversations up, please, and now individually take a couple of minutes just to add the single most important point that has been discussed into Mentimeter. So what's the one thing that you would really want to capture from the conversation that you've had over the last few minutes? And we'll put the Mentimeter link back up as well.
แล้วข้อสุดท้ายโพสต์ก็คือเชิงลุกก็คือมันต้องมี AI แหละมีอะไรก็ต้องตอบสนองเลยก็ต้องมี AI มาแล้วมีข้อมูลอย่างเช่นมีอะไรเกิดขึ้นก็ต้องแจ้ง user หน่อยก่อนว่าโปรเจกต์ผิดแต่ไม่ยากหน่อยแต่เมื่อกี้น่าจะมีประเด็นเรื่อง design with user เขาถามว่าทำไมไม่ดีไซน์แล้วก็มีคนตอบว่าต้องทำคิวทำด้วยยัง
ที่เราคุยกันยาวๆคนเลย
ไม่เข้าใจผมเข้าใจว่าต้องมาคิว
เราบอกเราได้มีบัดเจ็ตของเราเนี่ย2 ปี
ผมว่าปัญหาไม่ได้อยู่ที่นั้นปัญหาก็คือไม่มีคนทำที่จริงมันสามารถทำได้ในโปรแกรมเซอร์แต่ว่าส่วนมากไม่ทำเพราะว่ามันยุ่งยากที่จริงสามารถทำได้ก็ต้องทำเป็นก็ทำให้คุณเคยก่อนทำมันก็ต้องทำซึ่งเราไม่เคยทำเพราะว่าคิดว่ายุ่งยากกันไปถามบ่อยๆแหละอาจจะท ถามผ่านไม่ต้องประชุมไม่ได้
thinking เราต้องเป็นปาร์ตี้ไม่ต้องปาร์ตี้
ส่วนมากไอทีไม่ค่อยถามเพราะว่าไม่ถามทำไมยุ่งยากทำให้จบไปถ้าจะถามก็ต้องเปลี่ยนพฤติกรรมแค่นั้นแหละ
พอไอทีถามเจอปุ๊บอะไปยกเลยไม่เข้าใจ
ไม่ส่วนมากอะไอทีก็พูดกับยูเซอร์คุยด้วย
ใช่อย่างสสได้จบเป็นหน่วยงานใหม่ดังนั้นเราก็ให้เปิดโอกาสให้ผู้สำนักงานผู้สำนักงานเขา
Okay, let's move on, please. So we're now going to move on to the second of the three questions. And so that question is, what patterns or conclusions can we take from what we've seen and heard today? So we're going to use the same structure as before. So we're going to start off, please, on your own, just quietly, individually, writing down on post-it notes what patterns or conclusions can we take from today. So do that on your own for a few minutes, and then we'll get into pairs again.
So we will know actually how much. That's already the first part, and then we start increase.
Okay, so I'm going to invite people now to go into pairs again to talk about the post-it notes that you've written down on what patterns or conclusions can we take from today. Okay, if you haven't already done so, please form into groups of around 4, 5, 6 people and talk through the points that you've written down so far, the points that you've discussed so far.
They're adding to the Mentimeter as well.
But I never send the email to the EPA.
So you've got a few minutes still to discuss what patterns or conclusions we can take from today. Okay, if you haven't already done so, please now go and add the most important point from this part of the discussion to Mentimeter. So thinking about what patterns or conclusions can we take from today, find the key point that has been explored in your discussions over the last few minutes and put it into Mentimeter if you haven't already. Okay, we'll take 2 more minutes adding points from this section to Mentimeter, and then we're going to move on to the third and final question. Okay, we're going to move into the final question now. So the last question, for everyone to think about on your own, just write some thoughts on post-it notes, please. The final question for you to think about is, what do you want to do next? Okay, please now form into pairs and discuss what you've written down with your partner. So discuss what do you want to do next based on what you've seen today with your partner.
They're hiding behind you. Normally it takes me a long time to get some morning right. I wake up at 6:30 and I'm not like about to leave the house until I wake up. And then I don't leave the house until I should go for a run. The idea is I go to
Okay, I'm going to invite people to form larger groups now to talk through what you've discussed. So think about the key points that have come up in your pairs. Okay, if you haven't already done so, now let's move on to recording the most important point that came up in your conversation into Mentimeter. So what do you want to do next? Think about the single most important point that you would want to record and remember from today, and please do add it to Mentimeter.
I have a question. Can I ask the person who take the framework to the boss elaborate on what you mean? Are you talking about communicating like these principles to your leadership? Yes? Nobody wants to elaborate? Because communicating changes, like communicating different principles that you would like to implement to your leadership is also challenging for many OECD countries. So it will be good to better understand what you're going through, like why this made it up on the board. Take the framework to the boss. Or if you have a plan how you're going to do this, we'd like to learn more about it.
Just do it. Just do it. Just
maybe 10 years.
Yeah. So the suggestion up the front was don't take it to the boss, just implement it.
Just do it.
Otherwise it takes 10 years.
No? No more reflections?
Okay, I think that wraps up this exercise. So thank you. If you have any final points that you want to add into the Mentimeter, any actions that you want to take following on from today, please do add them. You've got a few more minutes if you need it, just before we wrap up. But that takes us to the end of this activity. Thank you.
ขอขอบคุณนะครับทุกท่านที่มาร่วมในวันนี้นะครับแล้วก็พรุ่งนี้นะครับยังมีอีก1 วันนะครับขอให้พวกท่านเข้ามาร่วมกันบันเทิงนะฮะพรุ่งนี้อาจจะมีของแจกเพิ่มมาอีกนะครับสำหรับคนที่มาร่วมกันในร่วมแชร์ไอเดียร่วมแชร์ประสบการณ์นะครับแล้วก็มารับฟังความรู้ต่างๆนะครับของจากทาง OECD นะครับวันนี้นะครับก็ต้องขอบคุณมากๆนะครับแล้วก็พบกันใหม่วันพรุ่งนี้นะครับเริ่ม 9 โมงครึ่งใช่ไหมครับ Start tomorrow 9:30 ด้วยพรุ่งนี้ 9 โมงครึ่งนะครับขอบคุณนะครับสำหรับวันนี้ขอบคุณมากครับ
And thank you to the interpreters.